What is the fastest way you've seen someone get fired?
Before we continue with the video, please hit a subscribe, likes, and comments to make sure you don't miss our next video.
Number 20. Reminds me of someone in my hometown who worked at an electronics store. He was stealing a lot, both money and goods, but he was really good at covering his tracks, so the owners never really had any hard proof, just suspicions. In order to try to see how things ran without him being there, they offered him a 2 weeks paid vacation as a reward for his hard work. Their suspicions were more or less confirmed when he declined. The dumb continued his shenanigans, but at this point, the owners had laid out several traps to gather proof and he was eventually caught. Criminal charges were made.
Number 19. Dude's first day on a team next to mine gets an assignment. As soon as the lead leaves the area, he leans over to another guy and threatens that if he doesn't do his work for him, he's going to kick his ass after work. I got up to the managers, we walked over and escorted him out. He was there all of 2 hours. On his way out, he's knocking over chairs and screaming that he'll be waiting for us in the parking lot. F***ing nuts.
Number 18. The guy responsible for opening the shop on Saturday morning went out and got blitzed on Friday night. We showed up to work to find his car in the lot, but the doors locked. He didn't answer his phone. Had to call the owner in to get us inside. Guy was fast asleep under his desk. He was gone before you could say hangover.
Number 17. Came out from the back and joined us while we were talking about work-related stuff, and he had a beer can in his hand. I immediately stopped talking about what I was talking about before and asked him, "Dude, what the f are you doing?" Him, drinking juice? What does it look like? My boss, that's not a FG juice, dude, that's a spiked seltzer. It's alcohol. Him, okay, so? Takes another sip. He was 16. He was fired on the spot and had to be dragged out because he was adamant it wasn't a big deal and threatened to stab me with his pocket knife when I tried taking it from him.
Number 16. I was on a new team hired for corporate sales. They trained us as a group. We were given the task of creating a presentation with graphs and charts to show how we presented to a group and given pointers on how to improve. One guy shows up an hour late, waltzes in and says he's tired from the drive-in and says he needs a coffee before settling in. We are in suit and tie and he's wearing a dress shirt with a huge eagle on the front and jeans. He comes back a few minutes later and when asked to present, he says he didn't prepare anything, but he's happy to answer any questions they may have about presentations. We all looked at each other in disbelief. Fired on the spot by the manager. I heard that they asked him to return his laptop and he stiffed them for months before they sent a repo man to his door to pick it up.
Number 15. New IT guy at a small, 20 employees, newspaper I worked at. I showed up early and opened the office. New IT guy showed up next for his first shift. He was totally, utterly drunk off his tits, lurching, stumbling, reeking, giggly and slurring, at 8:15 a.m. Way beyond a hangover. Confessed that he'd had a couple of drinks last night to celebrate his new job. The managing editor came in and paged the IT guy into his office to talk about the job. I hadn't said a word to anyone about him. Give him enough rope and all that. He was finished by 9:15. I walked home through downtown around 5 o'clock that afternoon. Ran into IT guy outside one of those old men's dive bars. He was maybe 28. He was all f***ed up again. Told me he'd had a couple of drinks to mourn the loss of his new job. Don't remember his proper name, but I'd like to find his LinkedIn to see what became of him.
Number 14. I was training a new manager at a hotel on the midnight shift almost 20 years ago. She'd literally been working with me for 5 minutes when I decided to show her around. Opened a boardroom door and caught our lead bartender plowing a guest on the granite conference table. He was out the lobby door holding his pants up within 90 seconds. He was immortalized as a legend forever though.
Number 13. Worked at a retailer that has long since gone under, back when I first started college. There was an employee who was adamant that they required a month's advance on their paycheck. They weren't even a full-time employee. Of course, our employer said no. Well, they weren't taking no for an answer. At the end of their shift, the former employee attempted to take the required pay advance directly from a register. They just emptied all the cash into their pocket and tried to leave. LP and managers stopped them long before they even reached an exit. Not only did they not get the advance they requested, they also got an immediate spot in a jail cell and were immediately terminated.
Number 12. I've had a lot of guys get fired on the first day. My industry attracts all the wrong people. One guy kept showing twerking videos to his female coworker, whose dad was the manager, then started asking her to try it. Had a guy throw a customer's bathroom sink out a second-floor window and obliterate the deck below. I've told this one before, but one guy came in with a bad attitude, so the trainer said, "Wash this window like your job depends on it." He did very badly, so she sent him home. Total of 20 minutes he was clocked in. We had a subcontractor show up to a job with new shirts that said, "Don't worry, we speak English," and immediately went into a racist rant about how funny he thought they were.
Number 11. Hired a bunch for temp workers for data entry. Friday, a young woman, 21 plus years old, to work for this agency, did not show up, so I called the temp agency, and they send a replacement at noon. Monday morning, the young woman shows up and tells me that Friday her friends were going to the beach, and she thought it was unfair that they had day off while she had to work. So she skipped. That is a real quote, skipped, like ditching school. Told her she was already fired on Friday, to go home. Then she says her mom dropped her off, and she had not ride till 5 p.m. in a city, so there was public transport available. Told her, "Sorry, in the adult world you have to clean up your own messes. Bye."
Number 10. The office hired this new guy who was obviously a bad fit. We would often give people a chance despite interviewing poorly. We hardly had any issues come up. But this one guy failed the drug test for meth, was obviously high during the interview, obviously hasn't showered in over a week, and had no self-awareness whatever. This guy literally walked into a wall while looking right at it. Regional hired him and gave him to me to work on a relatively dangerous site. I put him through the training, got him licensed, and even drove him to the site just to show him around and get him familiar with security procedures and safety protocols. He didn't retain any of that information and would repeat the same question over and over. I pick up my truck from the office and pick him up from home because he lived like 2 blocks from the office and doesn't have a car to get to the work site. That's fine, I don't mind driving people to the site. Keeps me out of the office doing busy work. But during the ride he confessed that he lost his license because of multiple DUIs and he sold his car to buy drugs. I told him to keep the drug stuff at home and only come to me about it if he needs to go to rehab. The owners of the business were always willing to work with addicts and tried to get them clean. So our company partnered with a rehab center that had a 6-month program. I explained this and other resources to help him out. Dude looks at me dead in the eye and says, "I don't want to get clean." I then told him to just come to work sober and don't allow his usage to interfere with work. He was 100% sober at this time. We get to the site and I have him pull out his company ID which you can to gain access to the site. I drove his ass to the main building where I would show him how to clock in and begin his shift, but he has to take a piss, so I stopped at one of the auxiliary buildings and showed him where the restroom was. 10 minutes pass and I figured he was taking a dump. 20 minutes pass and he's still in there. I go to check on him and found him in the bathroom stall with the door open, completely naked and a needle hanging from his arm. He had also masturbated and was covered in his own semen. I call an ambulance because I'm not dealing with that. They figured he was overdosing after he passed out and started vomiting, so they took him to the ER. As soon as he was carted off to the hospital, I left the job site and headed back to the office to file his termination paperwork. Didn't even have the chance to get him clocked in LOL.
Number 9. I was a manager for a cosmetic store at the mall. On my day off, I get a call from one of my longtime employees that our new hire had tried to fight a girl who came into our store because she was the ex-GF of the new hire's fiancée. I had to come in on my day off, pregnant and starving cause I hadn't had time to eat yet, to deal with this absolute middle school nonsense. When I got there, the new hire and her mom were just chilling by the register. Like fighting people while you're working is a totally normal, everyday occurrence. The mom had the audacity to say to me, "She didn't have no business coming in here." I had to inform her that our store was open to the public, so she had every right to come in, regardless of her motives. Then I had to fire the new hire. The crazy thing was, in her deluded redneck mind, she thought I was coming in to check on her. That I was there 'cause I had her back. I actually hate that I missed the fight, because my longtime employee said she threw the weakest, saddest little punch. She looked like Mr. Burns trying to fight.
Number 8. I was quality assurance for a place that evaluated operations involving explosives. I was leaving soon, so my replacement was hired. I recommended against his hiring because I'd heard bad things and he seemed shady. But they hired him anyway. So on his first day, I was tasked with training him on the job. He was already highly qualified on explosives, more qualified than I was, in fact. Anyway, as we're evaluating a couple of guys working on the internals of a live AIM-120 missile, this clown's cell phone goes off in his pocket. To even get into the bay we were in, you have to walk past about 4 signs that say to leave all electronic devices outside because even tiny amounts of EM emissions can set off the explosives, especially when the covers are removed/disassembled. So I wrote up my replacement with a direct safety violation and he didn't have a job by the time he got back to the office. Quality assurance's reputation was in the crapper for months. That idiot could have gotten 5 people killed, including himself.
Number 7. I worked at a movie theater as a teenager. Some suits from corporate office were at the theater doing stuff, including a really beautiful young woman in her early to mid-20s, who was in the group wearing a short jacket and a knee-length pencil skirt. We all had radios, and I was taking tickets near where the suits were hanging out talking to my boss when my radio crackled and I hear, "Holy shit, guys, did you see the ass on that chick from corporate office?" She blushed very red, my manager went very pale, and my coworker got very fired.
Number 6. Was told this tale by my boss at the time. A guy is hired as a federal government contractor, and after a lengthy approval process, he is finally cleared to start working. The guy is really excited and shows up to the government building 2 to 3 hours early. Neither his boss nor his coworkers have arrived yet, so he goes to the cafeteria, grabs a coffee and the day's paper, and sits down to read it while waiting. This early in the day, there are very few contractor staff around, it's mostly government workers. One of them walks into the cafeteria with a colleague, talking about how lazy contractor staff are, and they don't deserve the salaries they are paid. He immediately spots the new guy, seemingly relaxing and reading the paper when he should be working, and completely loses his mind, screaming at the new guy and threatening to have him fired immediately. This wasn't an empty threat, because the government guy actually had the authority to follow through on his threat. The new guy didn't get a chance to explain himself and was immediately ordered to go to security and wait for his boss. The boss finally comes in to meet a very pissed off customer and a very bewildered new guy. After many calls and emergency meetings, they explained things to the government guy and got him to calm down. However, he refused to back down on having the new guy fired. I guess he didn't want to lose face, and to keep him happy, they had to let the guy go. So, the new guy was fired before he even started.
Number 5. In my gym, one of my instructors had an argument with a customer. The customer was being a smartass, but the instructor, quite a muscular man, like a badly built bodybuilder, waited for him outside where there were no cameras and assaulted the guy, breaking an orbit and knocking him out. He then proceeded to go back in, intimidate the receptionist into not calling an ambulance and going around the gym telling everyone that they had seen nothing and that he knew where every one of them lived or worked. I called him and told him to pack his stuff, go home immediately. Next day he received a letter from our lawyer not to show his face again.
Number 4. First day at work for this new dude. We pick him up at 7 a.m. He hops into the car and goes, "Aw, geez, when are we finishing work today? I'm beat. Can you guys buy me a pack of cigarettes? Oh, and just so you know, I only eat meat for lunch." The boss stopped the car and told him to get out. It was like 7:03.
Number 3. My first job was in a small grocery store and my boss asked a coworker to do the dishes in the bakery, baking pans, etc. She replied, "I only do my own dishes, somebody else put these here so I'm not doing them." I'm serious. Fire me if you want, I won't do them. Boss says, "Okay then, don't bother finishing your shift, goodbye."
Number 2. I did the firing. I was sous chef of a large reception hall, meaning serving food to hundreds and hundreds of guests. One party had a big seafood display. Shrimp, oysters, crab legs and vodka, all in a giant decorative box of ice. When that portion of dinner service was finished, 2 new waiters were tasked with returning the big ice box plus leftovers to the kitchen and dish pit. They dumped the ice back into the ice machine. The contaminated ice. It even had some discarded shells. I saw it happen. I had to show them the door immediately and have a serious talk with their head waiter. They lasted 2 hours tops. Those idiots could have killed someone. Imagine you have a severe shellfish allergy, and the ice in your glass of water is lethal.
Number 1. First day at work, hired by a temp agency. Me and one other guy, we put stuff in boxes and tape them shut, stack boxes on a pallet. He can't keep up, can barely use a tape gun and decides it's time for break. Goes to the lunch room and takes a lunch. It was the boss's lunch, he stole the guy's meal his wife prepared for him. Boss man came over 15 minutes later and wants to know who ate his barbecue, sticky fingers, and barbecue on his shirt. He denies it. I just look at him and the boss and said, "Well, I hope it was good, man."
Thank you for watching. If you like to watch more of these videos, please leave a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and don't forget to share it to your friends and family. I'll see you in the next video.